this does open into chapter 4, since the first 3 chapters are missing. Okay, here we go. Will matter then be destroyed or not? The Savior said, all nature, all formations, all creatures exist in and with one another, and they will be resolved again into their own roots. For the nature of matter is resolved into the roots of its own nature alone. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Peter said to him, since you have explained everything to us, tell us this also. What is the sin of the world? The Savior said, there is no sin, but it is you who make sin when you do the things that are like the nature of adultery, which is called sin. That is why the good came into your midst, to the essence of every nature, in order to restore it to its root. Then he continued and said, that is why you become sick and die, for you are deprived of the one who can heal you. He who has a mind to understand, let him understand. Matter gave birth to a passion that has no equal, which proceeded from something contrary to nature. Then there arises a disturbance in its whole body. That is why I said to you, be of good courage, and if you are discouraged, be encouraged in the presence of the different forms of nature. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. When the Blessed One had said this, he greeted them all, saying, peace be with you. Receive my peace unto yourselves. Beware that no one lead you astray, saying, lo here or lo there, for the Son of Man is within you. Follow after him. Those who seek him will find him. Go then and preach the gospel of the kingdom. Do not lay down any rules beyond what I appointed you, and do not give a law like the lawgiver, lest you be constrained by it. When he said this, he departed. Chapter 5. But they were grieved. They wept greatly, saying, how shall we go to the Gentiles and preach the gospel of the kingdom of the Son of Man? If they did not spare him, how will they spare us? Then Mary stood up, greeted them all, and said to her brethren, do not weep, and do not grieve, nor be irresolute, for his grace will be entirely with you, and will protect you. But rather let us praise his greatness, for he has prepared us, and made us into men. When Mary said this, she turned their hearts to the good, and they began to discuss the words of the Savior. Peter said to Mary, sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than the rest of women. Tell us the words of the Savior which you remember, which you know, but we do not, nor have we heard them. Mary answered and said, what is hidden from you, I will proclaim to you. And she began to speak to them these words. She said, I saw the Lord in a vision, and I said to him, Lord, I saw you today in a vision. He answered and said to me, blessed are you that you did not waver at the sight of me. For where the mind is, there is the treasure. I said to him, Lord, how does he who sees the vision see it? Through the soul or through the spirit? The Savior answered and said, he does not see through the soul nor through the spirit, but the mind that is between the two, that is what sees the vision, and it is ... So that's the piece that's missing from the manuscript. Chapter 8. And Desire said, I did not see you descending, but now I see you ascending. Why do you lie, since you belong to me? The soul answered and said, I saw you. You did not see me, nor recognize me. I served you as a garment, and you did not know me. When it said this, it, the soul, went away rejoicing greatly. Again it came to the third power, which is called ignorance. The power questioned the soul, saying, Where are you going? In wickedness are you bound. But you are bound. Do not judge. And the soul said, Why do you judge me, although I have not judged? I was bound, though I have not bound. I was not recognized, but I have recognized that the all is being dissolved, both the earthly things and the heavenly. When the soul had overcome the third power, it went upwards and saw the fourth power, which took 7 forms. The first form is darkness, the second desire, the third ignorance, the fourth is the excitement of death, the fifth is the kingdom of the flesh, the sixth is the foolish wisdom of the flesh, the seventh is the wrathful wisdom. These are the 7 powers of wrath. They asked the soul, Whence do you come, slayer of men? Or where are you going, conqueror of space? The soul answered and said, What binds me has been slain, and what turns me about has been overcome, and my desire has been ended, and ignorance has died. In an eon I was released from a world, and in a type from a type, and from the fetter of oblivion, which is transient. From this time on, I will attain to the rest of the time, of the season, of the eon, in silence. So that passage described the ascent of the soul. Chapter 9. When Mary had said this, she fell silent, since it was to this point that the Savior had spoken with her. But Andrew answered and said to the brethren, Say, what do you wish to say about what she has said? I at least do not believe that the Savior said this, for certainly these teachings are strange ideas. Peter answered and spoke concerning these same things. He questioned them about the Savior. Did he really speak privately with a woman and not openly to us? Are we to turn about and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us? Then Mary wept and said to Peter, My brother Peter, what do you think? Do you think that I have thought this up myself in my heart, or that I am lying about the Savior? Levi answered and said to Peter, Peter, you have always been hot-tempered. Now I see you contending against the woman like the adversaries. But if the Savior made her worthy, who are you indeed to reject her? Surely the Savior knows her very well. That is why he loved her more than us. Rather, let us be ashamed and put on the perfect man, and separate as he commanded us, and preach the gospel, not laying down any other rule or other law, beyond what the Savior said. And when they had heard this, they began to go forth to proclaim and to preach. Okay, so that concludes the Gospel of Mary. And as you can see, similar to the Pistis Sophia, we have Peter very vocally objecting that the Savior would openly favor Mary and speak secretly with her about divine knowledge that the other disciples didn't know. But in the beginning, as the narrative opens, the Savior is in a dialogue with his disciples and answering questions about the nature of the universe and sin. And when he leaves them at the end of the dialogue, they are very anxious about what he has said. But Mary comes in and offers words of comfort and encourages the other disciples not to be distraught over what the Savior has said. And so then we have Peter asking Mary, like, what are after he has died, Peter asks Mary to share with them the secret teachings that Jesus told to her. And she tells them about Jesus telling her about how the inner soul was composed of soul, spirit or mind, and a third mind that's between the two, which is able to see the vision. Then we have the missing piece, and so then she's describing her vision that she had, and the revelation contained in her vision, and that revelation describes the ascent of a soul as it passes out of a body into the next realm. And that the soul in its ascent encounters these four powers that and attempt to impede its ascent. Of course, the other disciples are a little bit disturbed by this, and they are kind of in disbelief that the Savior would talk about this. They're like, certainly the Savior wouldn't teach about such strange ideas. And then, yes, you have Peter, who opposes her and said, doubts that Jesus would speak openly to Mary about these things. And like, why should we listen to her? She's a woman. But then Levi defends Mary and, says, he loved her the most. Of course they must have had some, conversations that we know nothing about. And that and Peter is very upset by this idea that Jesus selected Mary, especially, after the resurrection, to pass on certain teachings and to lead the disciples. And in this position of leadership, to direct his ministry. There's a very similar interaction between Peter and Mary Magdalene in the Pistis Sophia, where Mary is asking Jesus all these questions about the nature of the world, and Peter gets very upset, and he's like, she's a woman, like she shouldn't be like taking up all your time. She shouldn't presume to have the authority to speak over the other disciples. But Jesus actually responds by praising Mary Magdalene's spiritual acumen and encouraging her to speak. So that concludes the Gospel according to Mary Magdalene. Thank you so much for listening. I'm definitely going to do a video at some point on the Pistis Sophia, and I'll talk about all the juicy info in that one as well, and how it relates to the Gospel of Mary and the Gospel of Thomas and Philip, the other Gnostic texts that we have. Alrighty,